Star words, nothing but star words. If they should bar words, what would we do? You like that?
I love it. Is that the intro?
That should be the new intro when we do Star Wars.
Right.
Star words. Yeah, you can put some music on it, sexy it up. Not that it needs it. But... All right, so we're gonna
welcome to Marvel Age Star Wars.
We're gonna do another Star Wars tonight. We're excited about it.
Backed by popular demand.
Sure.
I mean, that last video had almost as many views as there are people on this show. So,
yeah.
I mean, you could see why we're wanting to continue that trend.
Which really means only one of us watched it?
Well, I spent hours editing it. I'm not going to watch it again after I edit it.
I guess that's fair. All right, so we're still on an extended hiatus from actually talking about the Marvel comic book, which we'll get back to. It's funny because the last issue that we did, we said, next issue, we're talking about issue number 17. And then what was even funnier about that is the tease in issue 16 said, next issue, the Empire Strikes. But actually, that's not number 17, and that's number 18. So
I was going to talk about that when we got to it. It's funny you brought that up, because I looked at my versions, my actual comics, and 18 is a black cover with, like, 3PO holding somebody or Luke or something. And it says Empire Strikes. I was like, oh no, wait a minute. And 17 is like
the Crucible
Luke,
episode, right?
Like some previous unheard adventure of Luke.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait a minute. They must have had a scheduling thing where they planned on doing that one next, but it wasn't ready yet. So they did it like what we used to call an evergreen, meaning there's like sometimes they have stories written and made just to fill in whenever they need one at the last minute. They'll create some generic ones.
Because that one's like a flashback of Luke on and I want to say it's like Herb Trimp or someone doing the art, so it is a different team doing that as a one-off issue.
Yeah, they do that in TV shows too. They do that not nowadays, but they used to have the concept that if something came up,
episode.
You do an episode that has no real continuity effect in it. You know, it's not going to change anything. It's some backstory
one they used to do, and I don't think anybody does this unless they're doing it as a joke now. But they used to do what they called retrospectives, and it would be an episode. Sometimes people say a bottle episode. A bottle episode is where they're stuck in a situation, but retrospective episodes did that too, where they'd be like trapped in a walk-in meat locker or something, and they'd be like, "Hey, remember that time?"
Clip shows.
Clip show is what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the worst
possible one.
The absolute worst.
Where they would just cut to, because sitcoms used to do it all the time, but serious shows, like hour-long shows, would do that. Star Trek: The Next Generation had one.
I mean, that's what happens when
you're
up against the clock and you don't finish in time. You have to throw something together.
You gotta have 22 episodes.
That may have been what that.
Season.
Well, when we get to issue 17, we'll see. We'll see how it feels.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I know that 17 is just a standalone, like, issue for that reason. It's a filler. What's weird is Star Wars had some of those. Now, this is not one of them, but there is a conspicuous issue that we'll get to where sometimes they would be, when they're being really cheap, a book would be canceled, but there was still an issue in production. And rather than waste the work that had already gone into that, like art, they would just say, could this be made into an issue of some other book?
How weird.
So there is an issue of Star Wars that began its life as an issue of John Carter.
Oh, that's weird. How do they redo the art at all? I mean, they must.
Well, of course, they have to draw the main characters, but they have a lot of
setups
and stuff that they are already committed to. And the basic breakdowns and plot were done, so they're like, just, I don't know, send Luke to a planet full of lizard people, I guess.
That's Super Mario 2 again. We talked about that. I don't remember what episode it was. It may not even been on this show. But Super Mario Brothers 2 on the first Nintendo Entertainment System was not a Mario Brothers game. And when you play it, It feels completely different than all the others.
Explains a lot, yeah, because it's weird.
It's a completely different game they had in Japan, and they just reskinned the characters. to make it Mario and Luigi, and I guess change the music.
Yeah, that's
But the gameplay and the setup and the boards, it was
smart.
all, yeah.
Well, hey, they do
I
that in
actually-
movies. Like, there's like probably at least 60% of the Hellraiser movies were not written to be Hellraiser movies. They're just like,
That's so
we got
weird.
this movie, just throw Pinhead in at the end, and you got yourself a Hellraiser movie.
Oh, that's just not good.
They're not good. They're horrible.
All right, so Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah. I did want to do a quick, since we do a little show and tell. I got something.
Oh, yeah,
today
yeah. Okay.
that was a little bit of an early birthday present. But can you see this little guy right here?
Boba Fett.
Now, what's cool about him is he is not a vintage Boba Fett. See that little apparatus that he's got here?
Oh, yeah, he's got the little spring-loaded.
See if we can actually shoot it.
It'll bounce right into your eye. And you're like, that is why they glued those in.
That'd be.
Now I understand.
Did we get that? Was it?
I didn't see it.
Oh, come on now! I can't watch. I'm doing
Shoot it at the camera.
It's very tightly loaded. This little thing, if it goes too far, you'll never see it again. When I got let's see where he is.
It'll be worth it to see it coming at the
Mazinga
camera.
back there. I don't know how to point at stuff. There he is, Mazinga.
Yeah.
But when I got Mazinga back there, the first thing I did was shoot one of his little finger rockets across the room, and it disappeared until we moved. It was just like, how?
They found it three rooms over,
we
embedded in the
followed
brick.
its trajectory. We saw exactly where it landed. Why can't we
Did you
find
do the thing
it?
they do in cop movies where they put the string from the entry wound or to the wall or whatever?
Yeah, we're doing Jock. Pepe Silvio. All right, let's try it one more time. I gotta. It's an awkward little mechanism. You would think you can't just push a button. All right. Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. There, that's gone forever now. So now he's just a regular Boba Fett.
It didn't even explode.
Ah, crap! I'm sending it back. This is from issue number 6.
Okay, so 5 didn't have any, or
5
are we
didn't
skipping
have
it?
one. No, we're
Okay.
doing them in order. 5 didn't have any.
Okay.
And so this is from issue number 6. Issue number 6 was the final issue that was an adaptation of the movie. So we're getting closer to people. Probably at this point, where people had all seen the movie, but nothing new has come out for them to comment on. So let's see.
No new content in the comics, you mean?
Yeah, nothing new. I mean, nothing new outside of the movies at all. I mean, this point in the game, there was no Splinter of the Mind's Eye or anything either. So the only thing that exists is the issues that adapt the movie.
All right, go.
What a difference a few weeks can make. When our first Star Wars column was penned a fortnight or so ago, we were talking about good reviews given the movie by trade papers such as Daily Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. Since then, be there a soul with head so dead that he doesn't know what's happened?
Good Lord, I love the way they talk in these things.
It's all Stan Lee's fault. This is, I'm sure, Roy Thomas writing this, though. George Lucas's multi-million-dollar space fantasy was hailed in advance by Time magazine as the year's best movie, and has received nearly universal praise from one and all. The lines at theaters from coast to coast are so long that even Ye Editor has only seen the movie 3 times, counting an early screening at George's own home, when many of the special effects were not yet laid in. But it's a situation he'll soon remedy. This is an interesting note, too, because you know, people do see movies several times in the theater now, but home video is a thing, like digital releasing is a thing.
if you miss it, you have a chance to catch it at home.
But back in those days, if you liked a movie, yeah, you had to see it more than once while it was in its initial run, and sooner or later,
miss it,
yeah,
you don't see it.
It would just have to be
Right.
re-released. Yeah, there was no. Eventually, they might show on TV, maybe.
Yeah.
And then eventually HBO came along, but even at this point there was no HBO. So there was very little chance. When we do another show and tell, I can show you, I've got one of the Super 8s that has just selected scenes from Star Wars.
That's neat.
Because that was the thing that people did before VHS. You'd get a home film projector and you buy these little Super 8 films, but they weren't, you couldn't fit enough on a reel to have the whole movie, so it would be just excerpts. So it's how weird is you're just sitting around your house with a full-blown movie projector watching like 20 minutes of Star Wars and going, ooh.
Of 8mm film, which is tiny.
You know what I love is when I was a kid, what we used to get were those little storybook soundtracks that would...
Oh yeah, I have those.
There's some that Buena Vista did a bunch of them, if not all of them, but the lower run ones were shorter and they had original cast. They didn't have actual sound work from the movie. They just had people reading them, and you had to read along.
I don't know if mine are. I don't know if mine probably aren't those.
The fancy
I
one
had them as a kid.
We had of Star Wars was actually had a cool narrator, and it was lines from the movie, and it went through the whole story. And I remember.
I think that's what I've got. I'll bring it out next time we do a show and tell.
Yeah, I've got the album, so I can dig that up, and we could do that on a show and tell too. I used to have the cassette, and it was a gold cassette, and I just remember forever we had that cassette till we wore it out, and we managed to make a dub of it before it wore out completely, and we listened to that. We just loved. That was how we remembered Star Wars in that bleached version.
And those big actual storybooks that are much larger but had the large pictures in them.
Yeah, I've got some of those too.
Yeah, we can show those. We'll show those. We're going to do special episodes of show and tell since we have, so much stuff accumulated over our lifetime.
Fun to play with,
And some of that stuff you might, it's not to show off, like, look at our cool stuff. It's just stuff that we think is fun.
Yeah, it's nothing cool. There's no value to these things. I recently picked up those storybooks at like a downtown store. They're not expensive. Alright, and yes, as heralded at the end of this issue's wind-up of the film story, just 30 days from now, Thomas and Chaykin will be carrying on the story of our Star Warriors into new areas not covered by the movie itself. It came about this way. I find myself interested in this story because it will be much debated later on what the real events of some of this stuff were. Alright, George Lucas himself, of course, has had plans for more than one Star Wars film ever since its inception several years ago. In fact, there exist several earlier screenplays under the name Star Wars, which bear almost no resemblance whatever to the film as it eventually emerged, and Roy was given these to scan to see if there was anything that could be turned into comic book Star Wars number 7 and beyond.
Man, I'd like to see those.
I would like to see what he's talking about. Well, because I'm sure we have seen those, because you can find them online. There's like 4 different drafts of Star Wars back from the old like Luke Starkiller stuff. It's cool if you haven't read those. I'll tell you a couple of references if you're interested in that stuff and you're trying to find a legit book that goes over it. The Annotated Screenplays is a really good book because it prints the screenplays as transcribed from the films, but it compares them to the previous versions in those other earlier drafts of the script. So it's a neat book. And
that sounds fun.
The Making of Star Wars, the big one that they did, I think Ryder Wyndham did that one, also goes into a lot of detail as to what the plot summaries of those earlier drafts are. So there's a couple of books out there. They've never printed the screenplays themselves. The closest thing was that when Dark Horse was doing Star Wars comics, they actually made a comic book called The Star Wars, and it was a comic book adaptation of the very first draft as written. And it was neat. It was a neat comic. But that's the closest they've for some reason never just straight up printed those original versions of the screenplays as they were. That's pretty neat. But you can find what seems to be legit copies online though.
We should read that comic do an episode of that.
Oh, we could. It's like a 12-issue book, but
well, we could do
it. I ain't scared. We haven't done 12 issues of Star Wars yet. But we'll do a whole separate series for the Star Wars, and we'll call it Dark Horse Age Star Wars, which will not be as fun a series to do as Marvel Age. So let's see. So Star Wars number 7 and beyond. While the screenplays are fascinating, they seem, if anything, to occur in the months and years before the movie itself, and we're pretty certain that it's really the likes of Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, the droids R2 and 3PO, that everyone wants to see more of.
That is true.
That is
Lucas.
true, but once you take some of those concepts, yeah, really, that didn't stop you in 99.
Yeah.
But why not mine concepts and then just do it, whatever. I don't want to tell you business. Accordingly, Roy got together for lunch in Hollywood the other day with George Lucas, as well as amiable Mark Hamill, who plays Luke in the movie, to discuss the direction he and Howie would take the strip. Messrs. Thomas and Chaykin had already plotted number 7 and set the direction for an issue or two beyond. But they wanted to be sure that their own scheme of things did not conflict with future plans of George himself, who oversees the movies, books, and other priceless items which will be emanating from the Star Wars Corporation in the months to come. That's funny, like in the early days, there was no Lucasfilm. Like everything from Star Wars came from the Star Wars Corporation.
Oh, that's neat. I guess I never thought about that. Did they not say Lucasfilm in the credits of the first movie?
I think
Is that something they added later?
No, I think the movies did say that. It's a good question as to whether or not in the initial run they did, because obviously they did when as far back as we can remember seeing them.
But I know Episode 4 was added during a rerun of the film. Like
Yeah,
the
after
original
Empire came out.
The original showings of the Star Wars didn't have Episode 4.
Yeah, when they did Empire, they had the idea to do the Episode 4 and 5 things, so Empire became Episode 5, and then they re-released Episode 4 as Episode 4. Fortunately for us all, since we labor always in the shadow of the dreaded deadline doom, George was enthusiastic about what Roy and Howie have done, and the other directions he suggested for the strip were nearly identical to what our writer-artist team wanted to do anyway, which perhaps is only natural since Roy and Howie have been two of the movie's biggest boosters since long before the film was even completed, let alone released. This gets me back to something I said in the other episode when we were talking about how Roy Thomas kind of felt slighted that he didn't get more recognized by Lucas because he felt like he had done a lot to promote the film in those early days. You know, one way or the other. I mean, however you feel. Like I said, Lucas just gave some people some bonuses. He wasn't trying to take away anyone else's contribution, so it just depends on what your point of view is on that one. Thus, beginning next issue, you'll be treated to the first ever sequel to Star Wars, the film, and Star Wars, the comic mag, in a series of stories which initially will center mostly around the space mercenary Han Solo and his Wookiee companion, Chewbacca. But never fear, because Mark Hamill threatened to turn the Sand People of Tatooine... Is that the
Did he really?
Probably not. Loose on RT and HC if they don't bring Luke and company into the scene pretty soon as well. Oh yes, and one final point. Roy was pleased as a parsec of punch to learn that he is one of the few people in this galaxy who is spelling the word Wookiee correctly.
Aha!
Namely, with 2 E's. Help me out here. Is that the correct spelling of Tatooine now?
I feel like there should be an N before the Tantooine.
Yeah, see, I think not. I always think there should be 2 T's there, but I think they got it right, and I'm just thinking wrong.
I'm completely confused. It doesn't look right. It looks weird. The more you look at
never
anything,
can
the weirder
spell
it gets. So
yeah, and a word like Tatooine doesn't have far to go before it sounds weird.
And I didn't know Wookiee had 2 E's. My whole life I've been ignorant of that fact.
My whole life is a lie.
This might be one of those, God, what does that affect? Mandela effect?
Oh, don't get me
Where
started on the Mandela effect.
I grew up in a reality where there was 1 E.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
exactly. No, it can't be that I didn't know or don't remember right. It's that all of time and space got altered, and I'm the only one who knows.
It feels like you know very little about quantum physics, Sean.
Yeah. Maybe
Do you even
book.
study like string theory at all?
String theory. Like quantum leap?
Exactly.
Most places, even in the movie's own program books, it's been misspelled with only 1. And since George went to great pains to explain just how upset Wookiees get when their generic name is mishandled, We're glad it wasn't
Manhandled.
It's manhandled. Oh, yeah.
Human handled.
That's weird. I don't know what that means then. When their generic name is manhandled. We're glad it
Handled
wasn't
by
us
man,
who.
obviously.
They don't like it, their names getting touched. It's like, how do you touch someone's name? Like, look, don't make a thing of this. They're Wookiees. Yeah, this is a letter from Ian P. Gadbowles. Yeah.
Is that an L or an I? Is it God boy?
I don't know.
God
I thought it was an L,
boys?
but
I can't read it. Go ahead.
Gadballs. Yeah, really. Mr. Gadballs.
I'm
Like,
sorry
it's-
if you're watching,
it's not
Ian.
how it's said.
Feel free to comment and tell us.
Hey, kudos on that name. That's an Ian P. Gadballs is a pretty awesome name. From Ottawa,
wonder how
Ontario. Oh,
wonder how many people
maybe
wrote-
it is
wrote-
an I because maybe that's French.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like God boy or something. I wonder
Is
how many
Ontario
people
French
from
Canada?
that sent letters in with fake names. You know, like Bend Over or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I.P. Freely. Mr. I.P. Freely.
Okay.
I need a
Let's get
man
back.
to hug and kiss. All right.
Let's-
So Ian writes, I feel Star Wars is destined to be more successful than your other current sci-fi adaptation, Logan's Run. Good call,
What's up
Ian.
with all the Logan's Run love? Good grief.
I guess it's just topical to the time. It was another big sci-fi movie and another big adaptation that Marvel was doing at that time. The galactic struggle of Luke Skywalker and Ben Kenobi offers more scope for extension beyond the adaptation than Logan. Well, that's probably true. I'd like to see, did Logan's Run even have an adaptation beyond the movie? I can't remember in the comics.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, like I said, I
But
had
I
a
don't
hand.
know.
I had like 2 or 3 of the issues, but I think they were both from the movie. I don't remember having any comics from Logan's Run.
I'll look it up and put it on the screen
Yeah.
while we're reading this.
They did have a TV show, if that counts for anything to anybody.
I did not know that.
I did not find
It did not run for long.
Yeah. I was gonna make a pun there, but then I didn't. Nothing came to me. I did not find Star Wars #1 as auspicious a debut as I had hoped, but issue #2 has given me renewed faith. One of the major breakthroughs I feel is the artistic combination of Howard Chaykin and Steve the Hawaiian. He must be with a name like Lealoa. Oh, I'm exaggerating a bit. Everyone's so cheeky. In the past,
No.
I have written several letters bemoaning Chaykin's stick-like drawing and excessive use of black, thick lines. That style has, I believe, hurt Solomon Kane's color debut. In Steve, you may finally have given Howard the colorist he needs to give his art animation and warmth. The characterization in your adaptation is already excellent, with only 2 issues under your belt. I can only expect greater things to develop as the story goes on, and that last panel, wow.
Oh, now I got to see what the last panel is. So he hasn't seen the movie yet either, I guess.
He's not talking like he has, so maybe not.
He's like, movie? Who needs a movie? I've got this comic mag.
That's my favorite part. There's a movie. I love
Yeah.
Star Wars. Like,
They made a movie after this comic,
they made that into a movie.
based on this comic. Yeah. I have just, okay, this is Michael Blue, also from Canada. All the Canada letters came in a couple weeks after the others. That's
Yeah.
why they're...
Way to fail, Canucks.
I have just read Star Wars #2. Beautiful art, pointed writing, action. I like it. Please continue the series. Go beyond merely adapting the movie, as you have done with 2001: A Space Odyssey and Logan's Run. Ah,
So I guess
answered
did.
it for us. However, someone made an astronomical error.
Oh, God.
On page 16, panel 5, I like how specific it gets. Han Solo says his ship made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. I'll bet he can run the mile in less than 100 yards, too. A parsec is a measure of distance, you fools! Approximately 3.26 light years. We all know what this is, yes. A light year is about 6 trillion miles. I expect my goofy gilded no prize by earliest mail.
Well,
So this is the
technically,
first
this is the first guy to
documented
bring it up.
argument. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Parsec is, but technically though, not to nitpick too much, but you're only eligible for a no prize if you also supply the reasoning for why it's not a mistake.
Right. I thought that was just given knowledge back then.
I guess not. Guess it didn't make it to Alberta.
Or maybe that's just like the Spider-Man fans know that. Maybe not people that read sci-fi, Marvel stuff.
Well, he said he's the one who mentioned no prize. Don't talk out
So
of
this
school.
this is interesting because this might be the first documented criticism of an actual part of the movie.
It has to be, because it's one of the earliest printed comments, period, about it. So yeah, they may be the first ones to actually bring it up.
So that caught on pretty quick. We'd love to present you one, Mike, since you're right on target. However, we asked George about it, and he says he wrote that line for the movie on purpose, partly as an in-joke, and partly to show that Han Solo was something of a bull artist, who didn't always know precisely what he was talking about. I like that, actually. So we're afraid you'll have to take it up with Mr. Lucas himself. I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea that Han didn't know what he was talking about. That's kind of cool.
That tracks, because if you watch the movie, like, Obi-Wan's reaction is kind of like, what?
I was like,
And
okay.
I want to say that in the script, it's written that way, that he gives him a sort of incredulous look when he says that. And I guess you could interpret that he's like, well, 12 parsecs, impossible. But maybe he's more like, this guy's a moron.
Yeah. And then they had to go and spoil the whole thing in Solo by trying to make it... That's the no prize.
Yeah.
Solo should win the no prize
Solo
for
is
fixing the error.
A 2-hour no prize. It's like, I'm glad that you told us where he got that gun and why he doesn't say Chewbacca's whole name.
And why where he got that bandolier that he wore for the next 50 years.
Yeah. I didn't realize that this 2-week period in our lives would be so formative. Like, I feel like this experience has cemented us permanently into who we are.
There's no need to grow past this point. We've reached our full potential.
When I'm 70, we'll still be wearing these same clothes and hanging out on this same ship. At least Lando got another ship.
The same blaster.
With the same gun. It's like,
and the same bandolier.
Solo, you are the saddest person in Star Wars. Because he's like, Solo's the equivalent of the guy who's like hit like 50 and he runs out in his Letterman jacket and he's got like a Corvette like convertible or something. Like, woo! IROC, yeah. I don't think they made those in convertible though, but that works. Just, yeah. I scored like so many times in here. It's like, I know. All right.
Bill Dickerson. Go ahead.
Yeah, from Crystal,
Bill
Minnesota.
Dickinson.
That's right, Dickinson. So the second issue of Star Wars continued with the quality science fiction storytelling begun in the first issue. With this issue, some of the pieces begin to fit into place, as the premiere issue had to introduce a lot of the story concepts and leave the details for subsequent issues. Luke Skywalker appears to be a character on a quest for vengeance after the murder of his aunt and uncle. Whatever, he barely cares about that.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Apparently, yeah, you're going to find out that he could care less what happens to his aunt and uncle. The only family he's ever known. The lightsaber.
Sabre.
I love lightsaber. The lightsaber is a very interesting weapon, and those two robots, 3PO and R2-D2, are two of the most unique and at the same time lovable characters to appear in a long time. My only complaint is that the art suffered this time as opposed to the first issue. Howard Chaykin is one of my two favorite comic artists, and anything less than his full penciling does his work a great injustice and disappoints me personally. Am I wrong in assuming that Steve did the finished art over Howard's breakdowns? You're not wrong in assuming that. Good eye. Like, we're going to have to dedicate an episode to go over, like, Chicken's actual contribution to these first 6 issues at some point, because it is kind of an interesting story. I mean, not really, but in terms of it being his work, not fully in name only, but if you look at Howard Chaykin's other work and compare it to his Star Wars work, there is a marked difference that you can tell. Gentlemen, this book is the finest science fiction comic I have ever read. In that, you can take great pride.
I love that people are really into the art. Like, I've always appreciated it, but I've never, like, looked at the inks and wondered who inked it. You know what I mean? And
Oh, if it's the right people, yeah, I would say that
I just think it's neat
I
that that's
follow the
like the
art.
second or third person we've read so far who's specifically talked about the art, and they look at it very carefully. Like, I just, if it reads and I understand what's happening, then I'm happy. Ruben G. Toyos, another New Jersey and New York beneath it. Roy is giving this mag something that the movie will never have: a great narrator. That's kind of true. There is no narrator in the movie.
It's fun. You get the audio tape. I lived on that.
So it's kind of an interesting thought. The story is full of a lot of little things that have given the series a definite flavor in just 2 issues, like the slightly offbeat people and the interaction of a dozen or so different races. Not to mention lightsabers and stuff. Sob race. Everyone's spelling it that way now.
Now it makes me want to go to the book and see, do they, like, we're going to have to see.
Surely they did. I don't think these guys are making it up. The story isn't standing still. I just hope it lasts longer than Logan's run. Man,
Well,
I didn't know that Star Wars had such a rivalry with Logan's run.
it wasn't that. It's just that there was such a vacuum for sci-fi. Like, obviously, whenever there was a sci-fi book out, that's people noticed. Because before that, the biggest sci-fi film series and the biggest license deal that was attached to it was Planet of the Apes.
Gosh, I guess you're right. Wow. I can't think of any more. I mean, there were single films, but not series.
Yeah, well, it's like when they say, wow, 2001, it's because, you've seen some of these. I've been reading them recently, but those Jack Kirby 2001s where they just made up their own story instead of adapting the movie is amazing. It's bonkers, but people really got into that because there wasn't a lot to work with if you were a science fiction fan. Especially science, one of the reasons that Stan Lee was reluctant to even do Star Wars is because science fiction comics don't sell a lot. Like, they do these movie tie-ins, but they almost never worked. Like,
I think you could probably argue that Fantastic Four started off as a science fiction book.
yeah, but its
this
appeal
neither here
is
nor
as a
there.
superhero story. Yeah, that's why I think it's a missed. To me, Fantastic Four and Green Lantern are the 2 biggest missed opportunities of superhero movies because they have such a strong basis in science fiction. You can make a very cool science fiction movie with those concepts, and people take them.
Well, they did it with Guardians of the Galaxy. They made that into a cool sci-fi kind of.
Yeah, and it was a
world.
fun sci-fi adventure, which you could certainly do something like that with Green Lantern.
Maybe they will.
So we'll see. They're working on a TV show. That's a step in the right direction. I've always said that Green Lantern would make a good TV show. So let's see. Oh, Sam Hayes from Garden City, New York, said Star Wars #2 was superb. Story, characters, and art combined to yield a fantastic comic. George Lucas is crazy like a fox to have gotten you to adapt his movie. The movie's bound to be a smash hit when it starts showing. Oh yeah, so it doesn't even come out at the point that he's saying this. That's pretty awesome. All I can add is that you've got me until you finish the adaptation. and then,
This is
then we're done.
I kind of want to go back and reread the adaptation now because I don't remember being blown away by it by any means.
Well,
but everyone here is like, this is the best thing I've ever read.
It has its problems, but maybe we should. We skipped it when we started doing this show because we wanted to cover the original story content, but maybe we should backtrack. Maybe it'd be fun to go back that way.
I don't remember it being that impressive. I mean, or out of the ordinary, I guess I should say. Matt Holmes, back to Canada. And so, here we go again. And so another film adaptation comic hits the stands. What with Logan's Run in 2001 already having been done, you'd think it would be getting a bit monotonous. Like, this guy's tired of all the sci-fi comics.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
no way.
Enough with all the 3 comics.
Star Wars is the best yet. If this comic had never come out, I doubt I would have even considered going to see the movie. Really?
Yeah.
But now I'll probably watch it twice. I may take the comic with me to the theater and compare the movie and the comic.
Oh my God, don't
I
be that
love
guy,
you, Matt.
Don't do
I
that.
love you. That's going to be the nerdiest thing I can picture in my head.
I'll take a flashlight
He's like,
with me.
he's
to
got the
annoy
book
people
out,
more.
and he's like, page by page, like pointing at the panel, going,
That's not what
He's gonna be
parsec
upset.
means.
He's going to be upset when the scene where Vader like floats the cup of coffee over to himself in the comic does not appear in the film.
Yeah, a scene that does appear in the novelization, though. So,
That doesn't make any
weird.
sense. How does he drink?
Well, this actually does come from an early version of an early draft of the script.
He has a straw that extends out of his mask.
I don't remember them.
Duh.
I think at this point in writing the script, they didn't have the character design of Darth Vader worked out. So the idea that he was wearing a full face mask all the time probably wasn't integral to his character at that point. I think that came in with Ralph McQuarrie, who literally drew him wearing a face mask because he figured he had to go into space. So
Yeah.
the idea...
And it kind of looked like a space helmet, the way he...
Yeah, so the idea that he's much more humanized in that early draft to the point where he could like drink a cup of coffee. It's kind of funny because at the end of that scene in the script, he gets mad and he uses the Force to crush that cup. And it's like, I don't know if that's having the impact you want it to, Darth. I mean, it's just a coffee cup.
That was my favorite cup, man.
Yeah, really.
How come you don't... And I know why, because who wants to see it, but you don't see people eat in movies. I mean, how many times in Star Wars you see the blue milk, and as far as I can remember, that's it in the whole trilogy.
Yeah, usually
You see Jabba eat like a frog.
they sit down at a table and then, get captured by Boba Fett or something.
But I don't ever remember seeing anyone take a drink of anything. So that of all characters, Darth Vader would be the one floating like a coffee cup. That's weird.
Well, that is that is one of my favorite panels because it is funny. Because it's not coffee, obviously. I should say obviously, but it's not coffee in the script or in the novelization. It's just a cup that he's drinking out of. But Chaykin clearly turns it into a steaming
Doesn't
cup
it
of
have like
coffee.
steam coming out?
In
Yeah,
the
so
comic?
it's-
Yeah.
What else is it going to be?
Well, what I mean, it's that's an artistic choice. That's not in
Clearly,
the
we're
story.
meant to think that it's coffee.
Well,
I mean, it's like a joke.
The way he
I mean,
drew it,
clearly.
we're meant to. What I'm saying
Yeah.
is the way it was written, it wasn't. Like that's his flourish. Like he put that there.
Maybe it was that stuff that in Mandalorian, the coconut rock that they break and all the cloud of junk comes out of. That's
Well,
probably what they were drinking.
They have coffee in Star Wars. They just call it calf.
I don't remember that from the movies.
It's not part of the movie canon, but
Ah.
yeah, it's part of the current expanded canon, which is canon with the movies.
I don't remember that from the actual movies.
They probably mentioned it in Clone Wars episode.
You want some death sticks?
Yeah, you want some death sticks? Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we got through another Star Wars. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Fun
And
stuff.
a lot of more. We should have. I'm gonna start keeping a running count. I may do it in the editing here of how many Logan's Run mentions we get in these letters, starting with episode, issue 4's letters, and then continuing into this one.
Yeah, because Logan's Run and 2001 seem to be... Logan's Run seems to be beating it.
Oh, definitely. A lot of people are talking about, comparing this to Logan's Run. This time, not the movie, just the comic. But the last issue, they compared the movie. They hadn't seen Star Wars, but they were comparing, saying if it's anything as good as Logan's Run.
Yeah.
I need to rewatch Logan's Run. I didn't realize it was such a big part of the culture
I'll
at the time.
rewatch it. I love that movie. But what it's making me want to do on top of that is pick up those old issues of the Logan's Run comic book.
Yeah, those have got to be super cheap.
I was
if you
doing
can
that
find
with the
them.
Battlestar Galactica because Battlestar Galactica also had a Star Wars. Like, if we ever want to just sidestep, we should maybe like do some Galactica. storylines. It wouldn't take long. That series didn't last as long, but they did the exact same thing where they took what at the time was the pilot movie of Galactica, and then they just carried on the story from there with original comic book stories. So those would be fun to read. Okay, well, we're not talking about anything now, but
All right.
there you are. So, please check out more episodes of Marvel Age Star Wars. We normally talk about the comic book itself, and so this is a bit of a deviation from that we've done for a couple of episodes.
I mean, if this is your first viewing of our channel, then yeah, you'll check out the others. They're much more into the showing the comic stories and not just
which we also
reactions.
enjoy doing. So we'll get back into that. But we're going to come back again. I think we didn't do this at first, and now we're kind of getting caught up on it because I think it is fun to do an aside every now and then where we look at the letters columns that were happening around the same time as those storylines. So hopefully we'll keep doing that because they don't have them in every issue, but they do about have them in every other issue on average.
And so far, I find them interesting, and
they're really neat.
Hopefully.
Like you said, when you get deeper in, it might just get to the point where who cares because they're saying no, I don't think Luke would do that because, but in the early days, like people haven't even seen the movie yet, and then some of the stories
got the
to see what
first
their
documented
reactions are.
criticism of the parsec drama.
Someone's already caught
the
on
controversy.
To that. So that'll be fun to see how the rest of that plays out. So I'm enjoying it, and we'll show you more of our toys and things along the way.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do a new series called Show and Tell, which is just gonna be a short little video where we show some of our Star Wars stuff that we've
tell you things about it.
had or accumulated over the years. All my stuff I can show you from when I was a kid. So it's
I'll have to repackage those videos of us going through my parents' attic looking for toys. That seems relatable to that kind of topic. So we can dig those up.
It's vintage.
Yeah,
by modern
it's a
standards.
vintage video. Yeah, I shot it on my
Vintage
Super 8
TV8
video
my dinner.
camera.
So everyone, thanks for watching. Check out tv8mydinner.com. You'll find this video there, along with some other
that we do.
content that Sean does, like the TV8 My Dinner podcast in particular. Check out Amazon. Sean has a book on there.
Yeah, The Cosmic Unconscious is there. So if you're interested in the psychology of Star Wars, that's what that book is about. We're on Facebook. So we're on Facebook as TV8 My Dinner. Also, Expanding Universe on Facebook is ours, and it centers mostly on Star Wars related material. So if you're interested in that, that's there. Like we said, tv8mydinner.com is sort of a jumping off point for all these kind of projects that you can follow through there. So we have a lot of videos and a lot of audio podcasts on there. But about 14 years worth of that stuff.
So check it out, everyone. And we'll see you real soon. Until then, my name is Brooks.
I'm Sean. And this has been
Bye-bye.
Star Wars! I won't sing the whole thing.
Snoop.